Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, a place where you can come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker, and welcome to episode 107. You're as free as you choose. So this coming month, we're going to be focusing on one of my favorite topics, and that is the topic of choice. That we have a right to have our choices. That the essence of empowerment and the essence of owning it is, of course, recognizing and owning our choices and detaching from the choices of others, and not putting our own choices on other people. So all month we're going to be talking about how the only way out of fear is into choice, and the only way to empowerment and making our lives better is making conscious choices that feel good for us. Because I think choice brings freedom. You get to decide what you want to do, what you feel, what you think, what you believe or want to believe, and what you want to do. Knowing you have choices, I think, can bring so many possibilities to your life. So life can begin to feel less limited, boring, or depressing, or maybe anxiety-provoking. You've heard me talk about how a lot of times anxiety can be, we are fighting ourselves. We're fighting our authentic selves. We're trying to be someone that we were never meant to be in order to please others or to play it safe or both. But I think you can drastically change a lot of things about your life, regardless of the choices that you've made thus far, and you can begin right now. So that's what's really cool. And all month we're going to be talking about how the little choices matter almost as much as the big ones. One of the big ones, I think, is you get to decide who you want to have around you, at least outside of work. Sometimes we don't get to choose our boss or our new coworkers. We don't get to choose our family, but we get to choose who we let into our inner circle of emotional safety and trust, and that we want to take responsibility for. I'm a big believer in environments and their impacts on us. And I think who you choose to put around you is a big deal, because they're either going to be healthier people who want good things for you, or they're going to feel threatened by progress in you and they may want to try to keep you back. Their lack of motivation of wanting to make better choices in their life might be inadvertently holding you back, and you may not even realize it. We are, in essence, the sum of the 5 people that we keep around us. So this is not to judge or blame them in any way. It's for us to take responsibility for who we have around us and who we therefore allow to influence us. If you don't have growth-oriented, open-minded, positive people, it's going to be hard for them to be able to support you making big changes in your life or taking a risk or making a U-turn or things like that. Another big benefit of focusing on being in a place of choice is that you no longer need to resort to being controlling or being controlled. Since instead, you will focus on what's yours to figure out. You won't make fear-based decisions. You won't act in a fear-based way. You will own your choices, and they will be yours, and they won't be about anyone else anymore. Remember the detachment phrase. That's about them. That's their stuff. What is about me right now? What's about me is the only place I can change. Another great thing about being in choice is you get to decide what your yes is and what your no is. And it's no one's place to tell you what those two things should be. People can give you information about the benefits and the consequences of saying yes to something and or saying no to something. But at the end of the day, it's our choice what we end up doing. No one ever has a right to tell you what your boundaries should be or what your choices should be. Within, of course, legal and moral codes of our society. Great thing about choice is you are responsible for all the wonderful benefits and the consequences of all of your choices. We all are. And we know that intellectually, and most of us would never admit to not know that, but that doesn't mean we live it out. We can blame other people or play victim without looking at, wait a minute, we chose that. We had some say, not for the whole shebang, but we had our part to be responsible for. I think we can't have really great self-esteem or feel confident or feel at peace if we don't focus on choice and stay there and detach and allow other people to have their choices. Because not only are you owning your choices and therefore in touch with the authentic you, the real you, and raising your confidence, it also forces you to have some really good boundaries and to allow other people to be wherever they need to be. Therefore, you can also have good relationships. I don't think we can have healthy relationships, healthy coworker relationships, romantic relationships, parent, child, sibling, neighbor, it goes on, without each person feeling like they're in a place of choice. Because how else do you negotiate? You can't. You'd have to control, manipulate, guilt, shut down, people please, rage, bully. You get me. So in my mind, the only place to go is choice. And to recognize that's where the risk is, yes. But that's where the freedom and the peace and the courage is to make your life something that you can be really proud of. Okay. But why do some of us really struggle to feel that internal locus of control? Like, to be confident for the most part and to trust ourselves just naturally. Like, why doesn't it come as second nature? If it makes so much sense that we should do this. And even if we think we have choices, for decision making not to become an overwhelming, awful, panic attack involving thing to do. Those of you who really struggle with that know what I'm talking about. The big restaurant menu can be terrifying. Well, that's perfectionism, and it has a lot more to do with growing up. So what happened back there? And, hello, what might have happened recently? If you just got out of a toxic relationship or environment, you probably wouldn't have picked that if you didn't have an unhealthy childhood in some respects. But also, it could have been a lot worse than your family was. So keep that in mind. So previous experience. One of the big things is blurred boundaries. You never knew where you ended and they began. In the worst case, perhaps, you were maybe raged at, physically abused, sexually, or emotionally. Those violations were overt and awful, and they took away your ability to feel safe, loved, seen, and heard as a separate individual, as a unique person, as a precious person, someone to be loved and honored and respected. Maybe not always agreed with, but respected. So you got the message loud and clear that your no doesn't matter, and to hell with you having choices, because that was taken away from you, sadly. And that's a big deal. If you had any of that happen and you have not done therapy and working through with loving support, I really encourage you to do that. You can't do that work by yourself, nor should you. Not only do we need to grieve with a safe person or a safe group of people, but we also have to heal and have new experiences with emotionally safe people to heal some of that and to put ourselves back together. And typically people don't choose friends and lovers to put in their life that are healthier. They pick what their family looked like, and then they just keep repeating the abuse. You never get a chance to heal. So what I'm talking about is consciously choosing healthy professionals and healthy support groups to walk you through that. So blur boundaries. How did you even know where you ended or began or who you were if you were always violated and disrespected? Another way is they modeled it. They modeled passive-aggressive behavior, victimhood. There's such a victim stance. The focus was outward on, can you believe what the neighbors are doing, or my boss, or it's your brother's fault, or why can't you be like your sister? There was defensiveness, passive behavior, nasty behavior. You were guilted when you wanted to do your own thing or have your own opinions or not like a certain food or not do exactly what the family likes. You weren't allowed to be different. Your assertiveness at times could have been seen as aggressive or selfish. Unhealthy families are really threatened by differentiation, by you being different from them. Everyone has to think alike, do alike, and keep the family sick. You got to keep the homeostasis going because they're terrified of change and more terrified of opening the can of deeper wounds there, especially those of the parents, where there might be things going on. There might be some drinking going on. The marriage is in trouble. Or if it's a single parent, there's some real issues there that they're not ready to look at. So, of course, they're going to model the behavior that they know. And they're not going to want you to open that can. I've seen families do some horrific things to individuals who wanted to just be their own person or change or say no. A lot of these families reek of control. We've talked about that before. Maybe you had parents also who thought they were being loving and protective and instead tied your shoes, cut your meat way past the appropriate age to do so, and therefore gave you the vibe that you can't handle it, even though they would deny that on the face of it. They questioned your thoughts, your feelings, and your decisions. Are you sure you want to do that? So you internalize that doubt. Your subconscious doesn't need much to start doubting. That's why master manipulators know damn well what they're doing when they put a really ridiculous statement out there in the media. Or if you're in a relationship, they'll say it to you just to make you pause for a second and say, I wonder. You hear that often enough. Your subconscious is going to have a hard time not believing it. Maybe your family, probably, if they struggled to be healthy, had tons of shaming going on, wounds to your self-esteem, which again created self-doubt, lack of self-love and acceptance. Here comes that perfectionism, right? You're either perfect or you're a horrible person. And maybe because of all the above, you really did feel like a victim. And you needed to heal the unresolved trauma and pain first before you could start reclaiming the self. And I think there is an order of business to some of this stuff. It takes healing and courage to create an internal locus of control where you have the wherewithal and the ego strength and the love and support around you to really own your behavior. It doesn't happen without all of those pieces, and it doesn't happen overnight. A lot of these families operated from what I call a fear paradigm, fear of retribution. If you said no or spoke your mind or wanted to choose something differently, or even choose. There was fear of shame, fear of feeling the awful guilt, or both. There was fear of loss of parental love or sibling love, loss of their approval, loss of belongingness. We need that to feel okay. We essentially need all those things to feel like we're going to survive and be all right. That is why when you became a teenager, you might have just grabbed onto your peers and pulled away from the family and said, screw you. But you had those friends to grab onto. When you're really little, you don't necessarily have that. And you don't have the autonomy to go out of the house and step away and be by yourself. In the fear paradigm, choices are actually fear-based control moves. And I want you to think about that statement as we go through this month. Sometimes we think we're choosing, and we're really not. We're trying to manage an outcome, and we don't want to admit that. We're trying to avoid conflict. We're trying to avoid abuse or maybe failure. And remember, a lot of that comes from early experiences that were not your fault and you were powerless. There wasn't much you could have done back then. But today, you're in charge of your choices and you have some power. So that's kind of the high-level view of what can happen growing up. We've done previous episodes on boundaries and on self-esteem, and I encourage you, if you're not familiar, go back through and listen to those, and that might be more helpful. For now, if those things resonated with you, just take note. It's something for you to work on. So, what was supposed to happen? Maybe the opposite of all that, right? You were supposed to be allowed to make as many decisions at every age that was appropriate to your development and appropriate to your maturity and your cognitive ability and all that stuff. Because that was supposed to instill confidence. Like parents are supposed to hold the parameters, and you were supposed to be allowed to pick between 2 cereals or 2 outfits that day. Or which TV show. Maybe what color crayons you wanted to use, or whether you wanted to color in the effing lines or not. I know I didn't. You don't get the, well, that's ridiculous kind of vibe from your parents or older siblings or babysitters or teachers. So nothing's negative. They just benignly say, okay, well, that was your choice. So you chose the blue crayon. You needed to feel like you had an important role in the family and that your choices helped, and that you mattered. That when you went grocery shopping, you got to choose what kind of ice cream to buy. Kids want to be seen and heard and feel like they matter even more than they want to be loved. And they need to know they belong to a good family, a good group of people. I saw this online. I love this phrase, personal delight. The joy. You were supposed to be able to sit in an experience and just emanate joy. That your parent or parents could honor a choice that you were excited about. You picked this great ice cream that you love. And no one tried to diminish that. They just let you have your joy. You were supposed to be taught responsibility, and you could not be taught that without them letting you own some choices. Let you fall on your face sometimes. Let you feel good about your good decisions, your good choices. You chose to clean your room so you could go out and play. You got good grades. You got the car to drive Friday night. That you could learn the loving lessons of life. Because having them taken from you, if you were rescued or so protected that you weren't allowed to make choices growing up and learn for yourself without judgment, that you were the only one who got to judge whether that was a good idea or a bad idea, right? Without feeling like an awful person or a failure. That's what we call growing a grown up. A confident grown up who can pay their bills, who can pick good people to partner with, who are good colleagues, good roommates, good friends. And finally, if you weren't allowed to make choices and just have your choices, how in the world were you supposed to discover you? Your likes, your dislikes, your gifts, your talents, what you believed when you were 5. If you were allowed to do that, then you could really find out who you were along the way and have a more solid future. So basically, your parents were supposed to detach and let you choose. Have healthy boundaries. They were to have consequences and benefits for you, of course. But not tell you what to choose, not shame you into choosing what they wanted you to choose for them, not guilt you for feeling selfish, but let you figure it out and be there to pick you up when you fall. All right, so I want to do an exercise. Those of you who've been with us for a while, you're familiar. If you're in a place where you can write the answers down, that's wonderful. If you're not, just see what comes up in your heart. This will be in the bonus download, so you can get it later from the newsletter and do some writing on it, which I encourage. Those of you who are not familiar, I'm going to read a sentence stem, and I just want you to quickly come up with 3 to 5 endings, whatever they may be, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. Don't question them, just trust them. It's what comes up for you immediately, because that's your truth before you filter it. Okay, ready? Number 1. If I were to look at how well I see and own my choices. If I were to look at how well I see and own my choices. Number 2. Growing up, trusting my thoughts and feelings felt like. Growing up, trusting my thoughts and feelings felt like. And number 3, when I think of how empowered I could feel. When I think of how empowered I could feel. So what insights arose out of those questions? Anything surprise you? Anything upset you? Anything get you thinking? Just focus on what resonated the most, because that's where you begin to do some work. That's how you know. My encouragement is today, and as we go through the rest of the month, be really compassionate with yourself. There are very good reasons why it may be tough for you to make choices, or why you made some less than stellar ones in recent years. Look at the context. You did the best you could with what you had. I don't want you to dwell on that. I do want you to own it. Own your part. Let them have theirs. Take your power back, but do it in a loving and compassionate yet honest way. Know that as you grow and get healthier, you're going to organically want to own your choices more and more. You're not going to want to put them on anyone else. You're not going to want to choose for anybody else. And you're certainly not going to want to let them in and choose for you. You're also going to see a lot more possibilities as you go. We're always choosing. Sometimes we just forget that. So today we talked about how the essence of empowerment, and I think the core of this whole podcast, is about owning your choices. So you can own or maybe re-own your power and your life. That's right. If you dropped it, you can pick it back up. We explored how early relationships and experiences may have helped shape your ability to focus on being choice-based or victim-based. And that's okay, because today's a new day. So stay with us the rest of the month as we delve in deeper to one of my favorite topics. Thank you so much for being here with me today. That tells me you're choosing you. Stay healthy, grounded, focus on yourself, and hold on to hope, and be the hope. Be sure to check the show notes at ownitpowercast.com. If you don't get the newsletter, sign up for it. I only send out one thing a week, guys. I don't load up your inbox. That's where you can find the bonus downloads for the episodes and all the other great information. All right, so pay it forward. Keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you can begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now so you can really own it later.